Wow, us Star Rail players just can't take a break. Despite going broke on the previous 2.1 banners, Robin and Boothill are coming out soon, so as always, this is Kay, and let's break down the 5 stars on the 2.2 banners to see who you should pull for. Robin is a physical harmony character. Basic is the usual single target attack, which you'll use when her skill is already active. Her skill buffs the team's damage dealt for 3 of her turns, which will be displayed on the character's icon. The duration will decrease at the start of her turn. Robin's ultimate has her going into a concerto state, which will immediately advance everyone else's turn. During this, she'll increase the team's attack, scaling with her own attack stats. What's great is that after every attack by other units, Robin will deal physical damage 1 time with a crit rate of 100% and crit damage of 150%. Now, this additional damage is not considered her attacking, but it can be triggered with FUAs, so the more frequent you attack with your characters, the more times Robin's ult will hit. While in this state, she can't take her turn until the ult ends, which will be shown on the action bar. So when the concerto is up, Robin will then take her turn. Good news is that when she's in her ult, Robin is immune to CC debuffs. Her talent increases everyone's crit damage by 20% at level 10. Additionally, when your characters attack, it'll regenerate 2 energy for Robin. FUAs will also count. For passives, Robin can generate 5 energy when she activates her skill. Second passive increases the team's FUA's crit damage by 25% when her ult is active. Third passive will have Robin's turn advance forward by 25% at the start of battle. Using her technique in battle grants her 5 energy at the start of each wave. Now, Robin can be used as a universal support because her buffs can help everyone. However, she truly excels in FUA teams because of her ult dealing damage for every attack. This adds up considerably when you have a team dedicated to follow-ups. On top of that, her passive increases the team's FUAs. With her, you can run a powerful team consisting of Ratio as the main DPS, Topaz as the second DPS/support, Aventurine as the sustain/DPS, and Robin as the support/DPS. Not free-to-play friendly at all, but you can swap out some characters for a less bank-breaking build. Now, you'll typically start by using her skill to buff the team and then build up her ult. Her energy requirement is pretty high, needing 160, but again, her abilities can help. This is again where FUAs are recommended since those attacks can charge 2 energy every attack thanks to her talent. Without FUAs, the frequency of your attacks goes down since you're just relying on normal types of attacks like basic, skill, or ult. Because of this, it can make charging her ult slower. Now, Robin is an SP positive unit, but she won't generate a lot of skill points for the team. You'll only use her basic when her skill is already active and when her ult isn't ready. Since her ult take Robin's turn away, if your team is very SP hungry, Robin can't help as much. As expected, when follow-up teams get more units, their value goes up, which means FUA supports like Robin become stronger. Robin being a support and a sub DPS makes her a strong asset for FUA teams. Boothill is a physical hunt character who obviously excel in single target battles. He has 2 basic attacks, one regular that can generate SP and the other enhanced basic which doesn't generate skill points. Activating his skill will have Boothill and a target enter a standoff state for 2 turns. This changes his basic to the enhanced attack I talked about, which deals a lot more damage, and as mentioned, it doesn't generate SP. The standoff duration decreases at the start of Boothill's turn. The target you chose for the standoff is taunted by him, so it's a great way to protect some of your allies from the enemy's single target attacks. Damage received will both increase for Boothill and the enemy. 30% increase for the target, and 15% increase for him. When the enemy in standoff dies or gets weakness broken, Boothill gains a trick shot stack and the standoff ends. This can occur even when other allies break or kill the enemy in standoff. A few things about his skill: it doesn't generate energy when activating, and when you do activate it, his turn will not end, meaning you can attack with his enhanced basic right after. Using his ultimate, it applies physical weakness on the target lasting 2 turns. This will help him break enemies of different elements. The ult will deal damage and delay the target's action. So his talent is where the trick shot stacks will come into play. Each stack he owns increases his enhanced basic attack's toughness shredding by 50%, which is insane as you're going to acquire more stacks. There is a limit to how much you can shred, however. Again, this is to break enemies faster during standoff. you can have a max of 3 trick shot stacks. When attacking with his enhanced basic while the enemy is broken, he will deal break damage to the target depending on the amount of trick shot stacks he has. More stacks means more damage. His stacks will remain even when killing enemies or entering a new wave, so that's always great. For passives, Boothill gains 10 energy when obtaining the trick shot stacks while in standoff. He'll continue to gain energy even if his stacks are maxed out. His other passive reduces damage taken by 30% from enemies outside standoff. This is good for survivability in fighting against multiple enemies. The final passive increases both his crit values based on his break effect stats. You can have a max of 30% crit rate and a 150% crit damage. So Boothill will heavily rely on break effect stats since the bulk of his damage comes from his talent's break damage attack. You obviously want to use Boothill against physical weakness enemies, but thanks to his ultimate, he can be used against other elements, and his toughness shredding is amazing, so you're not locked into a physical team. Having Ron Mei can really help him since keeping enemies broken is highly beneficial, not to mention she buffs break effects. So overall, Boothill looks really fun to play. Use his burst on enemies to apply physical weakness, then use his skill for standoff which taunts the enemy, and then use his enhanced basic. He will receive more damage from targets in standoff, so having a good sustain is recommended, but the enemy target will typically be broken, so you don't have to worry as much since your goal is to break them constantly, forcing them to be immobile. I forgot to mention, using his skill before battle will allow Boothill to apply physical weakness when using his skill on the target, similar to his ultimate. So off the bat, you're in a good start. So, Hoyoverse has introduced yet another strong DPS, and again, he looks very fun to play. Topaz is a follow-up sub-DPS who also significantly supports other follow-up attackers, increasing their damage. Thankfully, most of us should have a free Dr. Ratio who synergizes amazingly with her. Her primary kit revolves around her skill and talent. The skill marks one enemy with a proof of death state, which increases the damage they receive from follow-up attacks, scaling with her skill's level. This counts as a debuff which synergizes well with Ratio's abilities, but as a non-removable debuff, many other follow-up attackers will benefit from the boost in damage. Topaz's basic will be considered a follow-up attack after unlocking her A2 trace, and her skill's damage will also be considered follow-up. Only one target can have the mark, and the skill can auto-assign the proof of death to a random target if no enemies have the mark. This occurs at the start of battle or when the target dies, which will then mark a random surviving enemy. You essentially won't have to consume any SPs to mark enemies, but since it's random, you'll need to use her skill if you want to change targets. Whoever is marked will also be the attacking target for Numbi when it moves. Numbi basically acts as an auto 5th party member with 80 speed stats. When it moves, it'll auto attack whoever has the proof of death. The attack itself scales with Topaz's attack stats and will count as a follow-up. When the marked enemy gets hit with any of your team's follow-up attacks, Numbi's turn will advance forward. Numbi's own attack, however, will not trigger this effect. Topaz will help, but this is yet another reason why having more characters with follow-ups will benefit the team greatly. When activating her ultimate, it'll put Numbi into an enhanced state for 2 attacks. While in this state, its damage multiplier gets a huge boost and Numbi will gain a crit damage buff. When the marked enemy gets hit with any of your team's basic, skill, or ult, Numbi's turn will advance forward by 50%. A4 trace increases their damage against enemies with fire weakness, and for her A6, whenever Numbi attacks while in its enhanced state, Topaz gets 10 energy. A great stopping point for Topaz is E1. When the enemy who's marked receives damage from follow-ups, they'll go into the deader state, which increases the crit damage of the follow-up attacks. Basically more damage for what you're already doing. So Topaz is an SP positive damage dealer since the proof of death can auto apply. You'll use her skill for more damage, but if necessary, using her basic will help you generate SP for the team. Don't forget, her increase in follow-up damage is highly beneficial to others. Because of this, it puts her into a strong position where Topaz can help many current and future follow-up attackers like Dr. Ratio, Aventurine, and Robin. As expected, her value will continue to grow as Star Rail continues to introduce more follow-up focused characters. Fu Xuan is one of the best sustains you can get. She will keep your team alive. Her skill grants a buff that will have Fu Xuan take about 65% damage for the other allies. This lasts for 3 turns, and while the Matrix buff is active on your team, it increases their max HP, which scales off of her own. It will also increase crit rate, which is always a good thing. Her talent will also give a permanent damage reduction to everyone as long as she's alive. The talent will also heal Fu Xuan if her HP drops to 50% or lower. The auto self-healing does not work if she gets one-shotted, but if she survives, the healing ranges up to 90% of her health at level 10. Fu Xuan will have one self-heal trigger count by default and can have up to 2 max, which leads to her ultimate. Her ult is an AoE that deals damage scaling with her max HP, but the point of this is to gain a trigger count for her self-heal. Her A2 trace will generate 20 energy when using her skill. A4 heals all allies when using her ultimate. It's not a whole lot, but given that your team is taking very little damage means she can keep your party in good health. Lastly, her A6 will prevent CC debuffs for allies when her Matrix buff is active. The resistance can only occur once per Matrix activation. Her technique creates a shield that prevents you from getting hit in the open field. When going into battle with the shield active, the Matrix buff will be active for 2 turns. Fu Xuan is a simple yet highly beneficial character to use. Goal is to have her skill active and to keep her health relatively high since you don't want her to get one-shotted by attacks. Spam her ult to gain those self-heal triggers and use her basic attacks to stack SPs when her skill is already in effect. So what makes Fu Xuan so great is that she can sustain her characters for very challenging quests. In fact, she can be beneficial in helping you survive big attacks since your team won't get one-shotted or lose a large portion of their health. At times, this is more beneficial than some abundance characters who can only heal after the damage is done. Now, the issue with her is that constant AoE attacks or if enemies bully a specific ally, this will put a lot of pressure on you. Fu Xuan's ultimate isn't healing a lot, and if any of your party's HP drops very low, it's a race against time to survive. On the other hand, if Fu Xuan's self-healing counters cannot keep up with her loss of health, then she's at risk of dying, and of course, when she's gone, your team is going to die real quick. This often happens when she herself gets bullied. Now, this weakness aren't exactly within your control since you can't control which unit gets attacked by your enemies. So basically, don't worry about it. There's a reason why she's an S tier sustained, but occasionally you'll face a battle or two where it's like, why the heck are enemies picking on this specific character? So, who should you pull for on the 2.2 banners? First priority is Fu Xuan. She is one of the best sustains we have in the game and a unit that will keep your team alive. Having a powerful DPS or a strong support means little if you can't survive. On top of sustain, she offers some benefits like crit rate, and getting her at E1 increases the team's crit damage, not to mention relic support. She's a very simple character, but a character that will help you through challenging quests. Second priority should be Robin. She is a support character that excels in FUA teams. Team-wide instant action, damage and crit buffs, not to mention her physical damage from ally attacks. This adds a considerable amount of total damage, especially when using follow-up attacks. Now, outside FUA teams, Robin can still be beneficial, but there are other supports better suited to help. Again, this isn't to say she's locked into follow-up teams, but if you have other supports like Ronmei, Bronya, or Sparkle, they can be more helpful for non-FUAs. Because Robin is a strong follow-up, like Topaz, her value will increase as more FUA characters are introduced. So next really depends on what you want. If you want to develop a strong FUA team, get Topaz. As mentioned, she works well with Ratio, Aventurine, and Robin. Although I would recommend Robin more than Topaz, so if you can only choose one, I'd recommend Robin. Now, if you don't want FUAs, then obviously choose Boothill over Topaz. Boothill can deal considerable amounts of damage and can shred toughness easily. This is amazing for boss battles as you'll immobilize the enemy. On top of that, he looks very fun to play. I mean, challenging an enemy into a duel, a skill that taunts them and increase damage for both. Using him with Ronmei and Bronya can really enhance Boothill as you'll keep the enemies broken, and having Bronya advance his turn makes his shredding even faster. Again, not free-to-play friendly since I'm talking about 3 5-stars, but obviously switch and adjust according to what you have. But comment down below to let me know which character you're pulling for on the 2.2 banners. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for future Star Rail and Genshin videos. Good luck on your pulls, everyone. Till next time.